very common mistake that I see employees making when they come to me and they're thinking about bringing a claim against their employer is they overvalue or overemphasize the value of the publicity, the adverse publicity that might attract to the case. And they think that they are in a stronger position vis-a-vis the employer, because the employer will be absolutely scared about the adverse publicity. The fact of the matter is that, quite frankly, often the employer couldn't care less, and the world at large couldn't care less. So if you put it in context, you might have a dispute with your employer, you might be threatening to bring some sort of a claim, be it for unfair dismissal or constructive dismissal or bullying in the workplace or whatever. These things the employer can do without, but don't overemphasize or place too much regard or importance on the value for you of the adverse publicity, because quite frankly there probably won't be any adverse publicity. In other words, nobody really cares. Clearly that's not the case insofar as you care, but the world at large has other stuff to be going on with. For example, the homeless crisis in America last week, or this week indeed, the American president mocked an alleged victim of sexual assault by an appointee to the US Supreme Court, Judge Kavanaugh. In the context of these sort of stories, and in the context of various sports stories and the fast-moving life generally nowadays, your dispute, or the employee's dispute with the employer over a protected disclosure, an alleged protected disclosure, or an alleged bullying incident or harassment incident in the workplace, it may well be of a certain amount of embarrassment, and they will want to avoid it, but don't overemphasize or place too much importance on it, because in the first instance it's not going to court, it's going to the Workplace Relations Commission, and Workplace Relations Commission hearings in the first instance are held in private. So the thing is private and the decisions are anonymised. They're published on the Workplace Relations Commission website, but they are anonymised. Now if the hearing is appealed, the decision rather is appealed to the Labour Court, then the Labour Court theoretically is in public and it is open, and it may leak into the press if it's of sufficient juicy character. But you know, in the ordinary course of events, you need to guard against placing too much emphasis on the stick that you think you might have with which to beat the employer, and that is the threat of adverse publicity. Because, as I say, you know, today's news is tomorrow's fish and chips wrapping. It's fast moving, people have their own problems, people have their own issues. Many people, the vast majority of people, are probably motivated by self-interest, and quite frankly you need to be careful that the stick that you're waving around of adverse publicity isn't just, you know, something like a stick, you know, a completely non-existent stick or non-existent threat, because, as I say, the WRC decisions, they're all anonymised, and quite frankly my experience is that people get on with their lives, people move on. It's not as if people are watching very closely and combing through the Workplace Relations Commission website for decisions, because even if they do, all the decisions are anonymised and it's not actually clear who's the employer and who's not the employer. I know some decisions do leak into the newspapers and so on and so forth, but even, you know, a really embarrassing sort of a claim, you know, you'll see it in the Irish Independent, and you'll see it shared on Facebook. I share it myself on Facebook, but then the next day it's another story. So don't, whatever decision you make in terms of bringing your claim or progressing some sort of a cause of action against your employer, by all means fire away and do it if you want to, but don't over-egg the pudding when it comes to the threat of adverse publicity, because quite frankly there may not be any. Hope you find this useful. If you do, give it a thumbs up down below, and you might be interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel.